Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are going to have some brief fiqh points, some brief jurisprudential points. And I will come and I will do these when I am able, inshallah. And we will give some brief points that may be useful to you, maybe a refresher, or maybe you already know it. But the first thing that I want to bring is, what is fiqh? What is Islamic jurisprudence? Fiqh linguistically means, in its root, understanding and knowledge. So the word fiqh that we're using for jurisprudence comes from a word that means understanding and knowledge. That's why it's very important. Scholars, they have tafaqquh fi din, tafaqquh in deen, understanding in religion. They have a profound understanding, not just the do's and don'ts, not just the ahkam, but in the belief system, in the akhlaq, in all the areas of the Islamic educational material, all the resources of the religion. So fiqh, the word fiqh, literally comes from an original meaning of understanding and knowledge. So fiqh, in its original sense, is a profound understanding, a deep understanding. But this word has become narrowed down. It has become used to refer to one branch of religious knowledge. It has become narrowed down to mean Islamic rulings, Islamic ahkam, Islamic do's and don'ts, like how to do wudu, how to purify something that has become najis, mutanajis, or affected by najasatul ayn, how to do ghusl, what are the rules for a woman who is ha'id, what are the rules for the istihadha, what are the rulings for the deceased, what are the rulings of prayer, salah, what are the rulings of congregational prayers, what are the rulings of khums and zakat, what are the rulings of siyam, fasting, what are the rulings of trades and transactions, what are the rulings of marriage, what are the rulings of inheritance, what are the rulings of food and drink. So this word fiqh has been narrowed down to a vast field of knowledge, which we call in English jurisprudence. That is the Islamic do's and don'ts, the Islamic legislation, the ahkam. So fiqh then originally comes from a word that means understanding and knowledge. So we could say someone in that sense, they have tafaqquh in the belief system, or tafaqquh in akhlaq, or tafaqquh in ahkam, in the rulings. Now when we get to the rulings themselves, we have something called hukum takhlifi. Hukum takhlifi. Takhlif is what happens when a person becomes of the age of bulugh. Takhlif comes from a word that means difficulty. So when a person becomes mature enough, Islamic age of maturity, then the responsibility is on them to fulfill certain obligations. When it's prayer time, they must pray. They must do their wudu properly. They must do ghusl if they need it. They must do fasting in the month of Ramadan. If they owe khums, they must pay it. They have an obligation upon their shoulders. So, when we get to the sets of rulings which are titled as Hukum Takhlifi, we find that we can say that the Hukum Takhlifi are divided into 5 types, called Al-Khamsa Akam. Akam means ruling, and Khamsa means 5. 5 rulings, 5 titles. Every single thing from a fiqh perspective that a person does is going to fall into one of these 5. The first of the 5 laws is what we call as wajib, obligatory, mandatory. This is when there is a command to do something, and if we don't do it, we are entitled and deserving of punishment from Allah. There is a threat of punishment from Allah for not doing it, like prayer. If we don't pray, it's a major sin. We, in the hereafter, we are now entitled to and deserving of a punishment. There is a threat from Allah that if we don't do this wajib thing, a punishment. That's the first of the 5 laws. The second is haram, prohibition, forbiddance. Haram is when we're told Allah has prohibited us from doing something, and there is a threat of punishment from Allah if we do it. Like speaking immoral words, which are filthy words that people consider as very disrespectful to be uttered. Or drinking alcohol. Or eating pork. Or eating non-halal meat that doesn't have tafkiyah done to it. The Islamic slaughtering of that animal method. So, haram means that we are told not to do it, and if we do, and there's a threat of punishment on us from Allah if we do it. So the first was wajib, and the second was haram. The third is called mustahab. Mustahab means that it's good to do it, it's recommended to do it, but there's no threat of punishment if you don't do it. It's extra. Extra. Your obligation is to do wajib and stay away from haram. This is extra good for you. Then there's makruh. Makruh means that something is disliked to do, but if a person does it, there's no threat of punishment from Allah. Allah is not going to throw a person in hellfire for it. Then we have something called mubah. Mubah is like neutral, completely neutral. It doesn't fall into any of the other 4. Like just drinking water for that doesn't fall into mustahab, makruh, haram, wajib, whatever. Because yes, if you're going to die of thirst and water to save your life, it may be wajib to drink the water. If you're got to steal the water, it's haram to steal water if you're going to steal water. So there's all these different aspects. So mubah is something which is neutral, completely neutral. There's nothing that to say it's wajib, haram, mustahab, or makruh from a fiqh perspective. So an example of haram words is like for haram was like haram words, speaking out immoral words, which are filthy words that people consider it very disrespectful to be uttered. That people like say to stand listed as amongst the major sins. And wajib, like fasting the month of Ramadan, like doing the daily prayers. Mustahab, like mustahab fast, mustahab ghusl. This will end our short lecture on some brief points about fiqh. We will continue next time with some fiqh terminology. Wal akhiru dawana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.